All right, we're live. All right, everyone. Thanks for joining us in this LinkedIn Live event. I'm sitting here with George Burchlaw today from RE Analytics. George is from originally University of Texas, #1 ranked school in football this year, so far this year. So pretty excited about that. Hook 'em, right?
Exactly.
Hook 'em.
Of course.
Hook 'em. And George is the founder and leader at RE Analytics, an analytics company that helps out multifamily workers run their businesses. I'll pass it over to George in a second. Long history with working in the multifamily industry and the consulting side of things. We're going to talk about getting to hell yes today. George is a founder seller right now, so we had a lot of common stories. We met last week or this week earlier in Dallas. Had a good conversation about this kind of thing and working through it. So we thought, why not? Let's get this hell yes episode in the book. So George, if you don't mind kicking it off with a quick intro on yourself and your background. How did you end up in a founder role?
Guillermo, again, great to connect with you earlier this week, and nice for you to be in Dallas and to meet face to face. But again, appreciate you having me on the show. But I'm the founder of RE Analytics. We're based in Dallas. We do data management, financial analytics for small to mid-sized real estate companies. My background is in architectural engineering, so I spent about 4 or 5 years in engineering. Realized I needed to get into the real estate side of things because it seemed a lot more fun, a lot more sexy of a job as opposed to engineering, and jumped face first into real estate in 2000. Had a couple of jobs, one at a private equity company doing asset management and analytics, and then I spent 11 years at Forest City, big development company based out of Cleveland, Ohio. So we did some large mixed-use public-private partnership projects, converting office buildings to apartments, some really cool projects in downtown Dallas. And then I spent about 3.5 years trying to redevelop a mall site. And super challenging, a lot of data flying around. But every company I was with, the challenge was, we do all these analytics on the front end during the acquisitions phase, but how do you really track the financial performance of assets once they're in the portfolio? So when I was with that private equity company, the company was run by 2 super smart guys, but we had 60 or 70 assets all over the country, and no one could fundamentally track what was going on with all 50 or 60 or 60 or 70 assets. And it was we had a couple deals go sideways. So long story short, I developed a platform for those guys, and then in 2020 went back, got the intellectual property rights to the software I developed for that company, and then I'm now marketing it to small to mid-sized real estate companies.
Outstanding. And so, small to mid-sized, how many doors is that in your definition?
I would say probably more than 4 properties, probably minimum asset value, probably about 15 million, anything north of 15 million.
And typically they're seeking out to talk to you when they're going into a transaction or for standard operations?
Standard operations. So we don't do any underwriting work, but basically we do the analytics from the day they close throughout the whole period till the day they sell it. We see that's where the real gap is in real estate companies, just because the information comes from so many different sources on a property.
So getting to hell yes, and kind of further our conversation we had earlier this week. So who's your ideal buyer? We talked about small to medium, mid-size, but what does that look like with respect to hell yes conversation?
Really, we see companies probably if they have like 2 or 3 properties, they can probably manage what we do in Excel. But once they get over about 4 or 5 properties, that means 4 or 5 sets of loan documents, 4 or 5 sets of operating statements, balance sheets, and kind of the data starts coming in each month. And it's tough for some of these smaller companies to kind of track and understand all that stuff. So really, if you have more than 4 or 5 properties up to 50 or 100 properties, we see that challenge. If you have a huge portfolio of over 300-400 properties, companies have their own internal systems, but we see those smaller companies really struggling. Like over 5 properties, I'd say 5 to 50 properties is really our ideal customer.
And when they're looking to look at an alternative to buying your solution, is hiring more people, outsourcing it? Is that kind of the 2 other options, like door number 1 and 2?
Exactly. So typically, I'd say the knee-jerk reaction is let's bring on a junior analyst and have him kind of sort through all of this data, all the operating statements, all the information that's really gathered during underwriting. But boy, it's tough to scale because maybe they just kind of use Excel to do some side spreadsheets. But like I said, if you have 4 or 5 properties, but once you get to about 10 or 15 or 20, that's maybe 20 cash flow models.
Yeah,
how
sure.
to really aggregate, the information from 20 cash flow models into a platform to really understand what's going on with every property.
And then, and like the number, and like and then for everyone listening, presumably you've got, let's say once you get kind of that n equals 4 plus number, you've got veracity with respect to the kind of like what is the word? Different kinds of, the data looks different from different sort of operators. Like your PMC is going to give you 1 format, 2 format, 3 format, and it's all going to look different. And so consequently, it's a lift. I can imagine spreadsheets with macros that are bringing things in. They're all kind of like trying to shape it up to harmonize the data and ETL. You're ETLing it all in Power BI to bring it to some semblance of what it means. And that's assuming everything goes correct and all the data is available at the same time.
Exactly. Basically, all those different data sources, the property management software, the accounting software, plus all of those kind of the loan documents, entity documents, real estate tax statements, insurance policies. It gets to be a lot, all of it in different formats. And, how do you really understand all the nuances of all those documents, plus all the nuance of the financial statements?
For sure.
Or, a portfolio of 20 properties. So knee-jerk reaction, let's bring on an analyst, let's bring on 2 analysts. But then that's a lot of not really real estate work. It's more kind of aggregation.
And do you find so in the spirit of getting to hell yes, what is the kind of event in a previous call I was chatting about how externalities often prompt these,
you bet,
the hell yes, right? Or, I've got a lender meeting coming up, or I've got a bank meeting, or I've got a board meeting, or I've got, people can suffer quite happily along in agony. But it's until someone else has to be involved that they realize they've got to do something about it. And this is kind of why there's a lot of transactional software on M&A, is that now all of a sudden I've got to start getting involved with third parties. It's got to be, there's legal implications.
Yeah.
And so from an operating perspective, what's happening to them? And actually, this is new language. What's blocking them that they say, I'm going to go find a solution?
Well, typically they don't even kind of realize solutions are out there. Like I said, they would typically just, bring on more people. So the answer in their mind is more people. But once you kind of go through that cycle of hiring maybe a junior analyst, paying quite a bit of money for that person, training them in real estate, understanding all the real estate verbiage, and kind of all the documents. And then it's unfortunate sometimes those analysts leave after a year or two.
Sure.
That time invested into the new analyst kind of goes out the door, and you're left with maybe a bunch of random spreadsheets. And so I see they kind of do that once or twice, but if they don't know another solution is out there, they typically just go on through that cycle. So that's kind of on the people side. But if you have a deal that goes sideways, that gets people's attention pretty quick. So, the NOI is dropping on a property, but the information's buried in accounting software. And then you don't realize it till 3 months later, 4 months later, 5 months later. And then the principals start asking questions like, how come we didn't realize this sooner?
Yeah.
And kind of the lag between financials being closed to that information getting to the principals, that's long, and some bad things happen during that time. That gets people's attention. So
how do you begin to find those customers that are feeling that pain? Like, what's your approach in terms of this is the method of for everyone listening, when we're looking to sell to an audience, we identify who our ideal buyer is. Small to mid-sized multifamily operators is a big ocean of people, right?
Sure.
And so and not everyone's, and we have value. Your time is valuable. My time is valuable. As sellers, what we're looking to do is initiate change. We want to initiate change with people that are ready to adopt the change, or ideally, ready to adopt change is a bad language. They're seeking to adopt change, but they just don't know how to articulate what that change looks like, right? And so when you're looking to find people, how are you filtering for companies that will approach that hell yes?
Boy, I wish I had a good answer for that.
I'm looking to
if you're looking for me for the answer for that one, I wish I had that answer. So basically, we do a lot of outreach. We do a lot of LinkedIn posts. We scan job postings, and people are looking for analysts. And basically, we know they recognize the need. But like I said, their typical reaction is, we just need to hire junior analysts, and they don't even realize a solution is out there. But I think with prop tech, if it involves a pretty significant change, the only way they're really going to really want change is basically if they feel pain, especially if a deal goes sideways or investors start asking questions that they don't have the time or manpower to answer quickly.
One of the things that we're starting to angle in our language, so we're like maintenance centralization software, which is interesting, but like we kind of open the conversation now saying, okay, we solve three things: people, speed, and quality, which is kind of like all technology does, but you kind of open the conversation that way. Or I'm finding that I'm opening the conversation that way. Say, we solve people, speed, and quality. Which one is blocking you, right? Because some businesses it's not people, but it's speed and quality. And some people it's neither. It's neither. Nothing's blocking them. In which case you have kind of a healthy conversation and say, well, thanks very much, but I don't think we're going to solve anything here.
Right.
And this conversation of like people, speed, and quality, if they say, they're looking for people because they're trying to solve the problem. And so they've kind of, I love job postings as well. It's like a formal articulation of like of a need, of a pain, right? Of a blocker. And so, and then also you can figure out what the job should do. But like when you go look at those job postings and you go and if you get your outreach to them, I'm finding often the conversation is really around what have you tried, and then have them say out loud, well, we've been had this job posting for 2 years, or we're just always constantly hiring and training it, or they don't know all these things you just articulated, and having them say it out loud is the magic.
Well, like I said, they don't even realize alternative solutions are out there. It's kind of like, someone leaves, I hire someone. So that's kind of just what they do or what they think. And I think that's the challenge of, I'm sure, every prop tech company is to say, people are important, but what if you sprinkled in some technology to really kind of standardize that process? So if somebody leaves, it really is not a huge impact to the company because you have a standard process in place, and it's just bringing in a new person to utilize a process that prop tech companies have kind of implemented. It makes that transition so much easier, but it's kind of getting them to understand that. So I think that's the challenge with all prop tech companies.
Do you ever ask or kind of like dig in on like what, like I'm finding metaphors are a little helpful. Like for example, in our world, it's like, okay, who here had has bought a plane ticket in the last 3 months? Put your hands up. Who here has bought a plane ticket from a travel agent in the last 3 months? Right, hands down. And like, okay, well, that provided a service that was ultimately digitized because it's more reliable, it's faster, there's people, it's more convenient. And that kind of conversation, that metaphor opens the door towards, oh, maybe I'm hiring more travel agents.
Right.
Scenario, right? And then how do you articulate? That's kind of like what I'm starting to pick at a little bit is like asking the questions of, are you doing this the old way over and over again? And kind of like bringing that forward in metaphors that they all understand, right?
Boy, I tell some of my marketing people, it's like kind of like, no matter how great our messaging is, no matter how concise it is, if they're not ready for that message, they're not going to understand it, or they're not even going to like internalize it. So I think what we try to do is kind of, let's just keep pounding that message over and over again. And basically when they internalize it or when they kind of realize what we're saying, then that's the right time. But the only way to do that is to keep pounding that message.
My experience as a founder is that I've done a really, I'll say, and I always, in retrospect, it's always cringeworthy, like some of how I've articulated our value proposition.
I'm right there with you. You bet. It's a process, right?
It is a process. Like it is an unfair, iterative journey where it is. I can't even explain it. It is so unfair. The mess of ideas and thoughts and communication frameworks in our brains that try to translate our understanding, our view of the world into a buyer's view it's unfair. And so like what I'm learning is that, like, for starters, call recording is like the most valuable thing that I've started really doing as a discipline. And that's, and I've gone from, the recording a call and then listening for the call for just simply action items. And I'll go listen on a walk or whatever. Now it's like I'm listening for how I could have done better.
Sure.
And now and even I'll say even sorry. And then I moved to category, and now I'm listening to, okay, well, I should have asked this question. I should have asked this question. I should have double clicked here. I was listening to one call from a few weeks back, and the prospect like served up a softball, and I didn't even see. I was so busy talking about myself, I completely missed it.
And like we talked about, you get so hung up on your solution, how you can help, and you discard, after 5 minutes, it's like, boy, I've done a lot of talking. Is this person even internalizing what I'm saying? And that might be a curse of all founders, but that's why it's kind of, to have a founder that's maybe technical, but understands business development and understands sales. I mean, that's a real unicorn. So it's if you need help, I would say kind of how do you find that right team to learn from, and people who have been doing, sales for years. I mean, all that experience and all those scars that those people have, how can you leverage that?
Well, definitely, yeah. And I think if you're a solo founder or you're a team founder, even if you're in the role by yourself, listening to your own calls is the most valuable way to figure out, okay, how do we iterate towards hell yes? Because it gets back to the conversation. Like if you're having the same conversation over and over again, but it's not productive, then are you evolving? Are you adapting? And so, like, I had a call with a prospect in Dallas, and we were chatting, and again, we saw people, speed, and quality, right? And principally, that shows itself up as people. So, speed and quality present themselves as people problems. And this prospect was like, we have no problem. And I was like, for real? No problem. He goes, no, we have and they go on a company trip every year, the whole company. They're going to Madrid this year.
Wow.
And I was like, whoa. Okay, this is not your average company, right? And I got to kind of realize that understanding the organizational structure of the company is now a filter that I need to consider.
Mm-hmm.
Because if it's a privately owned family company, which this one was, they have a lot more liberties with respect to people, and they can treat the people, they can have profit sharing and all these things. Whereas if it's publicly traded, REIT, whatever, they have different rules. And so for me to kind of trim down my hell yes, I'm looking at a family-owned private company. I really have to think, I've got to take a look at the questions that I need to open with those questions around what are you trying to solve? Because often people take the call because they want to learn. And, part of our job is to teach and coach.
Right.
But, it's also like being mindful of the fact that we can't solve problems for everybody, and it sucks. It hurts. You get depressed and like disappointed, and kind of like the old Chris Farley sketch where you're just beating yourself in the head. But it's like, it's how do we learn from those experiences?
Well, it's interesting because you see the problem in your own mind and you just project that all these companies have it. And I would say maybe the majority of them do, but how do they really understand it themselves, and how bad of a problem is it that they really want to seek out a solution? And I think a challenge with a lot of prop tech companies is if you offer a bunch of value, how do you prove value quickly? So basically, it can't be a solution that says you're going to see results in 6 months, a year, or something like that. You need to be able to prove value as quick as possible. And I think that's a challenge for all companies.
Well, what I've kind of really become aware of is there's pain points and there's blockers. And like we sell a pain point, but not everybody bought into it. And so like trying to find the places where the pain point is a blocker is where we initiate action.
Mm-hmm.
I could drive by 1,000 gas stations in a day, but it's when I'm low on gas that
Right.
I go fill up, right? And that's the blocker that initiates action. It's like, I'm not going to be able to get to where I'm going to go if I've got no gas in my car.
That is a great analogy. I really love that analogy. If you're the gas station owner, why are these people just driving past my gas station? I don't get it. I don't understand it. But it's only the people who are low on gas that are going to stop. I love that analogy.
It's something that's really become aware of in the last bit here. Is that we've been selling and profit, or evangelizing on the pain, but it really is about trying to find people who are ready to buy because they've got a problem, and that problem has a time wall on it. So when you are looking out for people, so they're talking about their key shift in their behaviors, like you mentioned how the job postings, what else are you finding that they're that they're fed up with they're fed up with the current solutions, and what else do you look for? Do you hear that prompts them to buy?
I think it's almost impossible to time like when you do the outreach to their need. So like I said, basically we just keep pounding that message over and over and over again. And when if we catch them on the exact timing of it, and none of that is planned or structured, we're just kind of keep pounding the message. But as we see kind of more data solutions out there, you'd have to think these real estate companies are realizing, boy, we are really running inefficient. Maybe they're going to get hit with kind of attracting talent. Have a superstar that they've hired on, and the superstars not excited about the low tech ways this company operates, and then they lose that talent. After they do that once or twice, they're going to realize, hey, we can't really attract talent, and that's going to be a hindrance for growth. And how do they really scale that portfolio if they can't find people? So I think it's if they experience that firsthand, or their superstar leaves, then and they realize it's going to happen over and over again, then they got to make some changes.
So then, you mentioned earlier, like when a deal goes south, right?
Yes.
Like, do you have that in your qualifying questions? Like when you go meet somebody and you're like, hey, like, like we talked about speed, people quality, right? And so like in your quality questions, do you have that kind of conversation where you say, hey, like, have you had can you tell, or maybe we worked with a customer that had a deal that went south. And when they launched RE Analytics, they had a lot more robustness in their decision-making. So they're able to make better decisions faster. Does that sound like you?
I love the way you frame that. And that is good. We don't bring that up. We're trying to figure out, what is obvious and where's that stepping the line of kind of like saying, how can we really help you manage all these investments? Because technically they are a real estate investment company they're managing. So this is really their core business. So our platform and service really hits right to the heart of their core business. And it's maybe there's some personalities involved. And so you kind of layer in that, but that is an excellent question.
Like, I think that's something that we're trying to think through is like, we've got some really good customers. And I'll tell you a story. Like I just did a quarterly business review with one of our customers, or our CSM did a quarterly business review with one of our customers like 3 weeks ago. And then I met a very similar customer yesterday. And I just brought up the quarterly business review. I didn't even pitch the deck I just like, I'm going to try this because this is a little bit outside of our ideal customer profile. So I didn't want to kind of go through the whole, like, I just didn't have the headspace to go and create a new deck. And so I just pulled the deck from the quarterly business review, and I just said, here's what they were trying to solve. Is this what you're trying to solve? And then here's the result that they felt. Here's the outcomes that they had. And it was so natural.
Yeah.
I was just sharing a narrative from somebody, sharing someone else's story.
I think the thing is, the more natural, the better. And that takes a founder a long time to understand that. And kind of a lot of it, initially, it's going to be forced. Initially, it's kind of, you want to steer the conversation this way. But the more you're steering, the worse it is. So it really has to be a conversation. We want to be a partner, not a vendor. So I don't want to sell you something and walk away. I want to be a partner when the assets are doing good, the assets are not doing well, and be there. And so that's, I'm not sure if they really expect that from, because they're used to maybe just dealing with vendors. But to really emphasize that is something we try to do, but I'm not sure sometimes they realize it.
I'm finding that, like, for us, like, to try and, again, nudge in towards that hell yes thing. Like, we're always trying to de-risk buyers. We're a startup just like you guys. And so it's like, we're kind of, I always try to take the approach that, hey, this is a scary purchase for somebody. I mean, we're not scary for those of us audience, but like, think about the as a buyer, to choose a startup, you have to be in a situation where all of the kind of like safe to buys do not solve your problem, or they're out of reach with respect to cost, time, et cetera. Right. And so I try and think of it that way. And I try and think of, okay, well, how do I neutralize that? And obviously we have, we're always we've always been taught to expect references and quals at the very end, but I'm learning that talking about other customers at the very beginning neutralizes a lot of that anxiety around, well, they're buying blockers, right? And so it neutralizes that from the buyer side. And so like we're trying to find out, it's like, okay, so how do I begin to weave that into our conversations? Because I want to be in a position where I'm asking questions and not talking.
You bet. I think asking questions, you read any sales book, they say, lead with a bunch of questions like that. And then I hear it, read it, understand it, go into a call, and then I just start talking and don't ask questions. I mean, it is classic. And then I hang up and say, boy, I need to ask more questions. And then the next call, it's the same thing again. So I don't know if you have to experience a year's worth of making a whole bunch of mistakes for it to finally click in your brain. But like I mentioned, someone was giving me a demo of their platform, and they asked me all these great questions, and I started telling them kind of all of our needs, and I was like, that is how a sales call should be.
Yeah. and that's in the spirit of getting to hell yes, right? Have them articulate the pain,
right?
And I think that like a lot of times I would script the questions so it's similar to you, right? Read the books, do the stuff, and I'd script the questions like I was a lawyer, like I was driving them towards it, like I was leading the witness.
Right, you bet.
But the questions were not open ended. It was like, well, have you lost money on a deal before? Like it was so like they were so direct, rather than now I'm backing up and I'm saying, hey, like, tell me about a story where this happened, or, how is this working for you? And here's what we solve. Is this, valuable? And then at the same time, like, again, using the words like blocked versus pain has been a big change in language. Like with your customers right now, like, have you gone into talking to them, like why they bought, why they stay with you?
I think they have to be tech friendly. They have to be open to the technology, and they have to be willing to try. So basically, if they are willing to try something, and we make them understanding our services as painless as possible, and it comes back to kind of proving value as quick as possible. To say if we can prove value in 4 weeks, basically, so they really understand what they're getting. So they're not going in blindly to say, oh, once you implement our solution in 2 years, you're going to be great. I mean, I think that's really a non-starter for a lot of companies. But basically, if you implement our solution and work with us in a month, you will notice a complete difference of how you operate. You have to kind of shrink that time so they really understand the value proposition. But it's tough.
What I've been thinking about this for our website is, I spoke with the QBRs. We've got a pretty good. We've recently established to have a really repeatable cadence on our customer side of things, and it's proven to be valuable. As I mentioned, the QBR story. I'm thinking about putting that on our website, like the whole buyer's journey.
Yeah.
And like actually articulating what it's like to be an Iris customer, so that I'm setting the expectations. This came from another call I did, another live I did around expectations. But like being crystal clear about what expectations are from both sides, so that they aren't surprised, or it's not part of the pitch deck. It's actually, here's what it's like to be our customer, right? And we can say that because we have customers, and this is how we deliver value, and this is how we unblock you, I should say.
Yeah.
Like that's kind of like where I'm kind of thinking towards, to kind of like, again, reduce the blockers to buy. Like, what's it like to be a customer of Iris? Like, what's that feel like? So start kind of like, and not just from a testimonial perspective, like this is actually what it's going to be, right? Mm-hmm. And again, like trying to make a good word from one of my coaches that he uses is aerodynamic, right? How can I make this as aerodynamic and frictionless as possible, to the point that I'm actually peeling away a lot of if we've got 5 products, in call 1, I'm just talking about one, and I'm just talking about the one that we're world's best in, right? And I'm simplifying the pricing structure so that it's, again, like this goal to get into hell yes, and to try and just make it easy to buy, and then like leave the expansion opportunity for the expansion opportunity, and in all good time things will occur. And it's like, it's been interesting to try and do that, like just really obsessing over the buyer and like the problems they're trying to solve, the things they're thinking about how to solve them, what they've tried before, and then how we fit in their solution, how we're easy to implement, easy to buy, great to be a customer or a partner with, and then like test for that on a regular basis. Because what we're finding is that not everyone wants that. And so they're not hell yes.
Boy, I would say basically you can't build trust overnight. I mean, I would love for you to be able to build trust overnight, but it has to be a lot of small kind of stepping stones of, we told them that we were going to do this by Friday. By Friday, the stuff was done. So it's, hey, we're building a little bit of trust. And it's really kind of small building blocks, I don't know, each week with the customer. Then after 3 months, it's like, wow, you guys have done exactly what you said you were going to do. And then maybe, hey, I'll look at it, expanding my services a little bit and expanding my services a little bit. So if you could start just kind of developing that relationship on a smaller scale with a limited scope, realizing you have all this additional scope, and you kind of save that until that trust is kind of developed. But it doesn't happen overnight. And I mean, I would say 3 to 6 months possibly for them to really let go of what they're doing and giving you the opportunity to help them. But it just takes time.
Well, yeah, we can't forget that as humans, we're designed to not trust and not change. Like that's like deep in our DNA. That's why we're overpopulated in the world, right? And so like, okay, if we're designed to not trust, not change, then and as sellers, we're asking them to trust and change. What things can we do, right? What and you sell just a multifamily, or do you sell the single family or any of those other type of kind of like verticals?
All verticals, not single family. So basically multifamily, industrial office. So any kind of a commercial property or multifamily, but not single family.
Okay. So in all those cases. And then, and do you have to change your approach when you're talking about commercial versus multifamily versus like in those different sort of scenarios?
Not really, but basically because of a real estate asset, we look at it as an investment. So basically, whether it's an investment in multifamily or office, maybe some asset classes, the investors are a tad more sophisticated, some aren't, but that's really kind of negligible. And it's basically, we look at a portfolio of properties as a portfolio of investments, and regardless of what it is and how to track it. So each of them have kind of unique needs, but they're relatively in the same ballpark.
Gotcha. Okay. And again, I'm sure that's even more complex with respect to like the pain would be more intense if they've got a mix of portfolio mixes, because that data would be even more different.
That is the challenge that they have, especially if they've got third-party property managers who all use different systems. So we talked to a prospect 2 weeks ago. One of his clients gives him information in Yardi, one in RealPage, one in ResMan. And so basically he's got information from all these different systems. And he says every time he looks at a dashboard, it has like 7 caveats of, well, it doesn't include this, it includes this, but it doesn't include this. And it's, I mean, it's a pain point for him.
So do you find that could be even like, just hearing what you had to say there and playing it back, like that would be even more intense as a blocker, right? If I've got a variety of different assets, that the data is going to be even more, you're not talking about doors anymore. If you've got a warehouse, right? It's like, those are going to be very different in terms of like the data. So you can provide even greater relief to the blocker if they've got mixed portfolios.
Absolutely. So basically our platform can track any, and we categorize it multifamily office, and you can, sort and slice and dice. So we think that's a benefit, that it's universal for any property type.
Oh, awesome. Well, very cool. We'll look forward to seeing that maybe in the filters, right? As you're looking for it, as you're getting to hell yes. So kind of closing it out here, the chit chat we've had today, your experience, what's the one piece of advice for a takeaway that other sellers are out there trying to find those key moments when a buyer is ready for hell yes?
I think, like I said, keep pounding that message. And they're not, prop tech is new to a lot of these real estate companies, even though prop tech has been around in different forms for a long time. If it's going to be an operational change, you have to find companies that are willing to be open to try new things. And that's a challenge in itself. But again, find the people who are willing to change, and then be able to prove value as quick as possible. And it has to be tangible value quickly, so they can see it, build the trust, and then grow the relationship from there.
Right. So just want to respect the conversation. Is it find the people that need to change or willing to change?
Willing to change.
willing to change.
They all need the change.
Yeah, well, fair that. Fair that.
I'm fairly certain they all need to change. It's finding the people who are willing to change, and if they're willing to change, if you have to, I guess, capitalize on that opportunity, but then prove value as quick as possible.
Yeah, definitely. 100% agree with all that. Well, thank you everyone for listening. Thanks, George, for your time today. Like you heard on the podcast here, if you're looking to consolidate your data structures and bring it into a sensible format so you can make decisions, find George on LinkedIn
or website. And Guillermo, really appreciate you having me on. I'd like to make a shout out to the U.S. PropTech Council, and that's how we both connected. So if you're interested in property technology or kind of all the solutions out there, I'd try to message Amy Polvato at U.S. PropTech Council and try to get involved. But it's an exciting organization, and that's how Guillermo and I connected. But
that's a great shout out. Thank you for doing that. That's outstanding. I need to recognize Amy and the work she's doing more often. She's a force of nature, to say the least. Yeah, Hurricane Amy. Look out.
She's got a lot on her plate, and it keeps expanding, and the PropTech Council is really taking off, so it's exciting.
Yeah, she's outstanding. And then for anyone listening here, just subscribe to the podcast. We're on Apple, we're on Spotify, we are on Amazon as well. Take a listen. More of these in the past with respect to talking to folks and how we're selling. Valuable to buyers to hear how we're thinking about you and your what goals you're trying to achieve. Valuable to sellers to hear stories of people that are trying to unblock buyers and get things going. And I mean, obviously, one thing that we do want to talk about all the time is that it's when buyers and sellers come together that progress happens.
Yep.
There's an obligation for us as sellers to sell to the right people. There's an obligation on buyers to push us to make sure that we're selling the right solution, so we both can create value on either side of the equation. Otherwise, it doesn't happen. And so that's one of the things we want to achieve with this podcast. So thank you everyone for listening. Thank you, George, very much. Good luck this weekend for Texas and the Cleveland and your former times in Cleveland and the Guardians.
Guillermo, again, really appreciate you having me on. Thanks so much.
All right, take care, everyone. Bye-bye. Thanks, George.
Bye.